Here we are on a Wednesday, Cody. I'm done breaking down the offense, and people keep asking me everywhere from the gas station to church to the grocery store, what's going on with the Texas offense? And they want to do everything they can to say, is it all Arch Manning? Is there anything else to blame? And the question I get maybe the most is how much blame does the offensive line have for the offense's struggles through the first three games for the Texas Longhorns? We're going to go through some historical data and tell you exactly how much the offensive line is to blame for the struggles and the likelihood of Texas getting this turned around heading into the Sam Houston State game. First, let's thank our great sponsor, the Man Eye Institute. Give them a call today, 844-WOW-2020, 844-WOW-2020, whether it's for your LASIK needs, whether you have cataracts, anything for your vision. The Man Eye Institute is great. They're our presenting sponsor here on Football with Friends on the Orange Bloods Live YouTube. We cannot thank them enough for being such great sponsors, and they are the presenting sponsor of the show here, the show that we're going to be taking on the road, Cody. We're taking it on the road to Texas Beef Traders, another great sponsor of ours. That will be on Friday evening. So if you want to come meet us live, come have some beers, come hang out, talk Texas football, you want to come heckle us, we're certainly open to that. We're very good sports. Make sure and come check us out. Friday night, Texas Beef Traders, Loman's Crossing, and 620 there in Lakeway. You love Texas Beef Traders anyway. You get 10% off anytime you go in, and we'll have some, I'm sure Darren will be cooking up some free bites and stuff. We'll have free beer. Come hang out for a live show. We'll be here on the channel that night live as well. Texas Beef Traders, Friday night. All right. Cody, whenever people ask about the offensive line, I say, look, it's not 2024, and it was not realistic to expect this offensive line to be the 2024 unit to start the season. You don't just lose four guys to the NFL or three guys to the NFL through the draft, one guy to the NFL through the undrafted free agent process, and just expect things to just pick up as they were. It's not realistic. It's not what anybody thought. With that being said, I have some numbers here and some analysis here that goes to show that the Texas offensive line in some ways is, well, you can't say that they're better. You can say that they're operating at a level that should not be inhibiting a college football game plan at the Division I level collectively. And really as individuals outside of one performance in one game from Connor Stroh, which was last week versus San Jose State.
I thought it was most interesting the fact that we talked about NATO and Stroh last week so much, and kind of I was very much open to the idea that potentially NATO would get the start, and it's almost like they heard us talking about him, and they were just like, "Nah, man, Stroh's going to play basically this whole game." And
no, not basically. He played the whole game. He played all 80 snaps.
There you go. And I want to say basically because I couldn't remember if he got that last drive completely or not. And he has a 76.25 grade, which is just a hair worse than the Ohio State game. And it's still not, quite to the level you want to see. Like he still hasn't grown to the level that we've seen from Brandon Baker the last 2 weeks. But their dedication to Stroh at that position has to be telling. And I only assume it's going to continue into this week against Sam Houston, and I assume into SEC play.
Yeah. Well, look, man, I think that here's what I found. So if you look at 2024, if you look at the average deep dig grade across the whole season for the entire offensive line, right? The average grade through the unit for the offensive line as a whole was 79.46, which is absurd because that's basically the whole unit is operating at the level of a guy you think is probably an NFL prospect, right? The whole line collectively as an average was operating there. Now, where they're operating right now over the course of the first three games is at a 77.52, which if I read here on the deep dig grading scale means games in this area represent a good to very good Division I play, and teams with an entire offensive line operating in this area over the course of the game should experience no detriment to offensive game plan due to the offensive line. So even though they've had this mishmash of kind of characters, you have DJ Campbell, who is so enigmatic, who grades out like a complete all-star on one play and then grades like a total bust on the next.
Missed like 77.
You could tell why the staff gets frustrated with him. Like I get frustrated watching him. Like, gosh, man, like he has such he has such high highs, but there are times where you're like, dude, it's like Sark said before, man, I've seen how good you are. Like, what did you just do on that play? There's Connor Stroh, who's like the most unlikely starter that you can ever imagine. We've talked a million times about him. You have Brandon Baker, that was a complete mystery box coming into this season, right? You have Cole Hudson coming into this year, who needed to elevate his game, and who basically the best thing you can say about him so far is that, well, he probably knows the playbook better than anybody else. I think that's what you can say about Cole Hudson. So even despite all that, if you look at the snaps per disruption allowed, the average across all players in 2024, they were at 31.38. The average across all starters this year has been 30.69. And that's snaps per disruption allowed and or penalty caused, which you would think to yourself, okay, like that, that's not really fair to do it like that, because at the very top of the heap this year, you have Trevor Goosby, who's like a 66.67, which is top all time out of the 150 players in the database that have played at least 100 snaps on offense since 2015.
Yeah.
So he's pulling them all up. Last year, it was a much more even distribution that had them at that 31. It's like the guy at the top is like 48, and it's Kelvin, and there were lots of other guys that were up above 30. Whereas it's like now you have Trevor Goosby at 66 point something, then a chasm down to the next one down at like 24, and then you have down from like 24 to like Connor Stroh, who's moving up. He went up from 11 to 18 after this last week, but so what I did was then I said, all right, well, if you just look at last year, let's just look at the total numbers. Like, let's just look at the numbers and forget their averages and average those together. So they had the total offensive line snaps in the regular season last year was 3,863. That's how many I charted, sadly, pathetically. They allowed disruption once every 31.66 of them. So far, I've charted 1,030 snaps from the 2024 group. They've allowed disruption once every 26.4 snaps. So it's not as good.
Yeah.
But it's fine. It's still fine. It's still something that's it's still fine. And there's also the fact of the matter that you have the disruption that's being allowed this year by the offense. So and take 2024. 46% of the disruption came in the passing game. That was 56 combined sacks, quarterback hits, and quarterback pressures. 30% came in the run game. That was 37 total combined TFLs and run stuffs. And 24% came via accepted penalties. So 29 total. So 46, 30, and 24 was what it was as far as pass game disruption allowed, run game disruption allowed, and penalties. 46, 30, 24. In 2025, 41%. So 41% versus 46% has come in the passing game. 39%. So 39% versus 30%. So up 9% has come in the running game. And 20% has come via accepted penalties. So down from 24% to 20%. So if you just look at the distribution of where the disruption is coming from, it's coming 4 snaps more often for Arch than it was for Quinn last year. But the distribution is a lot more on the running side than it even is on the passing side. And, you compare that with the running backs and how hard it is to make a living between the tackles with guys like Jarrett Gibson and Christian Clark when there's no Trey Wisner, no CJ Baxter. You get a situation there where, you can't, I wouldn't blame the offensive line, but I would say that the offensive line sort of being up in that category a little bit, along with the degradation of the running back. You'd have to say that Wisner's been hurt. Baxter now has been hurt all except for one snap last week. It's put those two things together. That's kind of a problem. I wouldn't say you wouldn't put it all on Arch, but he is the CEO of the on-field product. Mm-hmm. And whenever you have an offensive line that is grading out at a level where there should not be any detriment to the offensive game plan due to this offensive line. You got to think that, it's a couple of things that are coming into play here. But if you're looking at like where to put the blame, and people are just trying to assign blame everywhere but Arch Manning, I look at him, I say, well, how can you be if you've watched the games, you know that's a great amount of this blame probably has to go to Arch. And I'm not sure if you saw today what Joel Klatt said about it, about how he wasn't um, he wasn't seeing the full picture as far as his first read. He's getting off his first read too fast, and he thought that was leading to him like the play clock sort of speeding up in his head and getting him off of rhythm with the whole scope of the play, which was leading to these mechanical issues and stuff. To him, it seems clear as day. I'm not a quarterback's coach. I've never, not related to any quarterbacks coaches. That I'll leave that to him. I trust that he knows more about that than I do. But I think as far as people saying, can we put some blame on the offensive line? To that, I say, are they as good as last year? No, they're not. Are they fine? Dude, believe it or not, they're kind of fine.
I think they're really fine. You just talked about what Klatt said. I did not hear what Klatt had said about him not progressing through or getting off his read too quick. On 95 dropbacks this year, though, Arch, this goes together with two things that you just mentioned, the offensive line and holding onto the football, is he's on 95 dropbacks. Arch is 5th in the Power 5 in average time to throw, which means he holds the ball the 5th longest or has the 5th longest time to throw the football behind his offensive line. And the names in that category are not great. It's Kyron Jones at Virginia Tech. It's Gronowski at Iowa. It's not a great name. Michigan State's Childs, who's had a good year. But it's 3.25 seconds for Arch. Last year, I think it was 2.71. I don't have his page up right now. It was up earlier. I think it's 2.71, 2.76 last year for Arch's time to throw. But again, like I said, it's 5th best, 5th highest in the Power 5. He's been sacked once this year. His offensive line is playing good. And even if you think back, I don't think
the offensive line is allowed 1 sack. I think he's been sacked more than once.
The starting offensive line's allowed 1 sack.
Right.
Which is tied with Tennessee. Tennessee's allowed 1 sack. That's best in the SEC. Best. So today on the SEC teleconference, Sark was asked about the run game struggles, and I thought he laid it out very interestingly. And I'm going to come back to Arch because it comes along with it. He said, Sark did, I really felt like we ran the ball well in week 1. That was the strength of our offense in that game against Ohio State. They ran for 150 yards. We came back in week 2 and had explosive plays in the pass game. Obviously, they had that explosive 6-minute span where they scored 4 passing touchdowns, but we were choppy in the run game. Yes, they still ran for over 130 or 40 that game. Last week, I felt like there was an opportunity for more yards. We were playing our 3 younger backs, and I think their ability to recognize where runs were going to hit was a great lesson and where we can grow. We've got room for improvement, and we've made incremental progress. I like getting our younger runners opportunities. That will continue this week. And I just think through that process of what I just explained is that they wanted to get the run game going early against Ohio State, and they did, right? And they tried to do it against San Jose State, and it was a little choppy, but the passing game is what came through in the second quarter. And then last week, they were going against the number 1 tackling team in America, according to PFF, in UTEP, and they had the 3 younger backs. There was no Wiseman, there was no Baxter the entire game. So who's to say that they wouldn't have had a problem running the football if Baxter and Wiseman were healthy? Again, you're getting debut for James Simon, who had 5 missed tackles forced in that game, had a bunch of carries. You had Christian Clark getting a grip of carries, and Jarrett Gibson, like a lot of, that's like you're still in your first 100 carries for all those guys in their collegiate careers, very young, debut, et cetera, et cetera. I expect that to continue to grow this week. That should only help Arch Manning long-term because you have Wisner and Baxter. They're going to be back in 2 weeks, but also with these even younger backs getting more carries under the belt, the offensive line continuing to protect. My question for you, Alex, is we've all talked about it top to bottom, what Arch looks like, how he's playing. I was talking to Maddie earlier this week, our friend Maddie, and he's like, I just look at it from like this perspective. Like if you're playing baseball, like you just got to get a couple of hits, just get moving, just a couple of hits to get you warmed up. Or in basketball, I get some layups, just something to get you warmed up. And like, do you start this game against Sam Houston? And I know we'll talk about this tomorrow, and we'll talk about this live on Friday. You guys are going to come hang out at Texas Beef Traders. Do you start this game with just trying to run the football a ton in the first quarter to get everyone relaxed, score some points, Do you start out just trying to get some base hits, trying to hit Wingo across the middle, try to hit Jack Andrews, hit all these open, short
I'm not sure
quadrant passes? If
did,
Andrews doesn't play, he doesn't play, whatever. You get my point. Or do you just say, you know what, Arch? Last year, you were much more successful pushing that football downfield. So we're going to come out against a team that we know we are so far. They're not going to say this out loud in public, but we are so much better than talent-wise, everything across the board. We're just going to come out. We want you to just push that football down the field right away. Like, how do you get through that? How do you push through and push past what they're in right now?
Well, I'd generally say you learn to crawl before you learn to walk, right? And then run. I would try and get him in a rhythm. I'm not sure here's the thing. Sark knows he's told us about his process before, about his process on Fridays, going through what do we do during the week that you liked? What do you feel good about? What are you most comfortable with? On Friday, just go over that stuff, man. Go over the stuff that Arch likes and just say, all right, well, our opening game script is going to feature those plays, and you know the timing of them. You know where the guy's going to be. You're going to know where to place it. We're gonna get you going, because here's the bottom line, Cody. It's after doing all this, I began to realize that, and it was a conversation I was having. I talked with Chad about it on the show today earlier. That a guy I know here in my community out here, I saw him at the gas station, and he's just like, why can't Arch just look like he did last year whenever he came in and started? He's like, I know that we were all expecting him to take a big step forward and do the Heisman and stuff like that. But at this point, they're like, well, I would just like that. I would really love to see him just look like he did last year. And I got to thinking to myself, I said, he played well enough last year to where there were fans saying, take Quinn Ewers out of the game. We want more of what we saw from Arch earlier in the season. He had some picks. He didn't do everything perfect, right? But there was a baseline level of competency there. When you just analyze this offensive line, are they as good? No, they're not as good as 2024. The defense, are we sure that they're better than 2024? I mean, it's hard to be completely sure, but I think so. The fact that we're even having the conversation, though, it's like it's a really, really good defense, right? If we get Arch Manning just playing at what we used to consider coming into this season, when we're getting what was projected to be the glass half full projection of almost everything else, defense, offensive line, all that stuff. These wide receivers like Parker Livingstone has been a revelation. We thought that was going to happen. Not everybody did. It's like, if we can just get Arch to that baseline, just back to the baseline minimum level that we were expecting. 2024 Arch Manning filling in versus ULM, filling in versus Mississippi State. All of a sudden, this is a team that's a threat to win a whole lot of football games.